You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody. Returning to Katahdin, an Appalachian Trail dream. Have you ever dreamt of hiking the AT? Bruce Matson did, so we're going to follow him every step of the way. Hi, and thanks for coming back to listen to Returning to Katahdin, an Appalachian Trail Dream, sponsored by Trailtopia Adventure Foods. It's kind of bittersweet for me at this moment. Bruce is near the end of his journey. He's into Maine now, and it will be all over very soon. Judging from the great reviews that many of you have kindly left us on Facebook, this year's Jesser has proven to be a big success. Our man has planned and executed his plan almost to perfection. But you recall his confessional a few weeks ago, his banana pudding moment, as he called it. It hasn't been all plain sailing. This is a real test of your fortitude and your ability to keep going forward when everything about your day is screaming at you to stop. That's why only 1 in 4 people who set out on the Appalachian Trail get to finish. But for those who do, man, it is the most satisfying feeling in the world. And I envy Bruce that moment he's going to get in a few weeks' time at the top of Katahdin. We caught up this week on Friday, and as luck would have it, when I texted him to give me an idea about when we could record, he texted straight back and said, "How about now?" Now, I'm normally pretty prepared with a few questions lined up to keep the conversation moving if it's tending to flag. This, I had no warning, and I got straight to him. I normally have, at the very least, a listener's question, but as you're going to hear in a moment, Bruce even provided that for me this week. The trail truly does provide. But before we go to Bruce, we've got a little message from our friends. Do you remember those cold, wet evenings on the trail when you pitched up at a shelter and there was nothing you would have rather had than a beautiful, hot, home-cooked meal? Well, apart from actually going home, you could try out one of the delicious meals from Trailtopia. Why not dig into their spectacular jambalaya with its authentic Creole flavour? Or how about their beef stew, which is loaded with beef, potatoes, carrots, mushrooms, corn, green beans and green bell pepper in a fantastic beef gravy. Go on, try them. Trust me, you'll love them. Trailtopia, the best of home cooking away from home. So now, without further ado, let's hear from Bruce. Okay, now we're on with Bruce again. Hi Bruce, how are you?
Hey, I'm in a really good place right now, thanks.
And I know you are. Not only are you in a good place, you've actually got a questioner for me who's actually standing next to you. You want to, if you pass it over, tell him to tell me his name and then ask you the question. Make sure you can hear it.
Sure. This is Gbolt. He's a loyal listener of the podcast, and he's been on the trail since mid-March, and he has graciously agreed to let me hike with him in Maine if I can keep up with him, just to help me get to the finish line. And so he's right here, and he's got a question.
Okay. Hello.
Hey there, Mighty Blue.
Hey, how are you?
This is Gbolt.
Hi, Gbolt.
Pretty good.
Now, you've got a question for Bruce, I understand.
Yes, I do. I want to know when on this trip, this trail, over the past few months, when his faith has been tested the most.
Ooh.
And when the good Lord he feels came through to him more than any other point on the trail.
That's a good one. Let's face it, all you guys have a lot of tests on the trail. So if your God speaks to you at that time, that must be a wonderful thing for you. Well, thanks for that. Listen, yes, make sure you send me an email if you get the chance when you get into town. Give me your home address or wherever you're going to be, and we'll get Trailtopia to send you a couple of meals, all right?
Sounds great.
Appreciate it.
Great show. You do a wonderful job for the trail.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much. Cheers then. Cheers.
All right, I'm back.
You got that, did you? You got the question?
I did hear the question.
Good one. Very good one.
And he really didn't know the answer when he asked the question.
Right.
But we've talked a little bit about my banana pudding moment and how I got through that.
Yeah.
But as the weeks moved on, being out here got to be very trying. And as much as I wanted to be independent on the trail.
Yeah.
And I enjoyed my time together and stopping when I wanted to stop and going when I wanted to go. I always enjoyed all the friends I made, but most friends I made for 2, 3, 4, 5 days.
Yeah.
And for my reasons of my choosing or their choosing, their pace or my pace, I didn't ever have a family that lasted for a long period of time.
Right.
And I was really struggling with the fact that I had to go through Vermont, New Hampshire, and Maine. I was, just feeling like I've been out here a long time. It wasn't a banana pudding moment. It was more of a, golly, there's over 100 miles in Vermont, there's over 100 miles in New Hampshire, and there's over 200 miles in Maine.
Yeah.
And I decided that I thought having some hiking companions for a longer period of time would be something that would help me on the journey. And so that was something that I actually prayed about and asked for. And interestingly, the morning after I made that prayer, I actually connected with a guy incredibly by happenstance and hiked with him for 8 days. And then I was sort of passed off on a hike with another group of people for about 5 days. So it was, I would say, that was most trying time was when I had all this time in front of me. And, it's a good reminder for, us believers that we don't do everything all by ourselves. And it's good to get some help from friends and as well as from our God. And so that's really how I ended up at Gbolt. That while I made that prayer, I really wasn't connected with him until Maine. It took that amount of time, and he came rolling along on Franconia Ridge when I was up there, and it just was one of those moments where I said, "This is the guy I need to hike with to help me get to Maine." So
amazing.
That he didn't really know all of that, and so I didn't put him up to that. But we had dinner. And we're in Andover. We've got a little Nero here, getting some resupply and other things done. So it was kind of fun having him. He just walked out to make a phone call too, and that's when I yelled over to him if he had a question for you.
Life's all about timing. Trail provides. It does. There was someone there with a question. How about that? Isn't that amazing? I just love stuff like that. So where are you in Andover?
Well, there's a couple here that a couple of years ago they have a sort of a summer cottage here. They live more south of here, and they come up most weekends. And there were some hikers hitchhiking. They don't live too far from. They're just about an hour outside Andover. There was a couple. There were some hikers hitchhiking in the rain, and they picked them up.
Uh-huh.
And they took them somewhere. I don't know if they took them to one of the hostels or whatever.
Yeah.
I think they might have just taken them to a trailhead. And then they said, we should bring them in. They need a place to stay. And they went back and got them, put them up in their home. And ever since then, it's been a little word of mouth that they're here. And
how nice.
They're just fascinated by the enormity of the task of hiking from Georgia to Maine or Maine to Georgia.
Yeah.
And they don't want any thanks, any money, anything. They just want stories. They want to help, they want to help people, and they want to hear about their experiences. So again, just coincidence or happenstance, but I was in Gorham actually paying for my lunch. And two people I have known since Hot Springs, North Carolina. I had dinner with them at Elmer's, and I've seen them on and off for the whole time, for 4 months.
Yes.
They literally got dropped off outside the restaurant, and I went out and talked to them, and they said, when you go to Andover, you've got to go see Jeff and Tracy. And so we're seeing Jeff and Tracy today, and they're picked us up, and they're preparing us dinner and breakfast, and they're driving us into town for laundry and resupply, and they just most sincere people, and they just want to help, and they the only thing they expect of you is to you share some of your trail stories with them.
How nice. That is such a lovely, lovely story to tell. I think, we've said this many a time now, the kindness of people just takes your breath away sometimes, doesn't it?
Oh, no question. And I could have stayed. We could have stayed at one of the hostels, but it wasn't really about the money. It was just like, this will be a more interesting experience, we thought.
Yeah, I quite agree.
And,
quite agree. Very nice.
Yeah.
It was a good question then. Tell your friend it was a good question. He definitely deserves his 2 meals. By the way, have you heard the news about the Crawford family?
I have not.
Let me tell you.
Unless they summited.
They summited today,
Did they summit?
but they didn't go to the top. Rainier, the young baby, wasn't allowed to go to the very top above tree line, so they stopped. They stopped as they hit tree line. They decided to do it as a family. Don't you think that's a fantastic decision they made?
I do. I do.
They did it as a family.
They went the whole way together,
like
you say, as a family, and I don't think anybody will really take away from them what they accomplished. I have
definitely not.
Barb, one of our biggest followers, she's been following the Crawfords, and she sends me updates. So that's why I knew they were close to summiting.
Yeah, very awesome. Anyway, since we last spoke to you, you were in Gorham, I seem to remember, and I knew that you were soon to do the Mahoosuc Notch, which is, they say it's the toughest mile on the trail. I don't believe it is at all, but it's such a great jigsaw puzzle, isn't it? Did you enjoy that?
We did. People say it's the toughest and most fun. I'm convinced. I think Gbolt and Recon, the three of us did it together. We're all convinced. It's all about your state of mind. If you go at it as something that you're just going to take the time to have fun, you're going to have fun.
Yeah, totally.
It took us 2 hours, which was, reasonable time, I think, from what I've heard.
Yeah.
But we didn't worry about the time. There were 3 or 4 times that you had kind of precarious decisions to make. And we had a light rain that didn't help.
Right.
But we went through some tunnels. I have to tell you, one of the funniest things was Gbolt and I are working through this tunnel, pulling packs through it, and we look back for Recon, the third in our group, and go, where is he? And I look up, and it's like the Cheshire Cat. He's on the other side of the tunnel. He found a completely different, easier route around this tunnel. And he's just sitting there going like, what? I'm taking you guys so long. It's hilarious. It's just hilarious. So, you've been through, there are alternate routes, and you try to choose one, and you go, oh, no, let's go back. Let's try a different route. This is too steep. This is too dangerous. This is a dead end. But, we really did have the right attitude. There was a single Nobo with us, and we sort of adopted him because, I do think it's a time when it's good to be with some other person or people. And so he helped us. We helped him get through. There was one time when he tied a rope to his back and lowered it down. So as you know, there's some crazy things. But it is, like you say, it's a jigsaw puzzle. It's you can't prepare for the Appalachian Trail through hike and not have heard about the Notch and heard an awful lot. And you hear extremes, you see YouTube videos. So I don't think any of us were that surprised by what we encountered, either the severity of it, the craziness of it, the length of it. The only thing that was slightly surprising for me, of course, we did put our poles away immediately, which was smart.
Yeah.
I actually changed the way I packed my pack the night before because I normally have a little tent and bedroll at the bottom of my pack.
Sure.
And I knew we'd be taking them on and off and passing them through, so I figured out a way to pack everything inside my pack, even though it was a little taller, and it worked. It was, I think, a good decision.
Yeah.
The only thing I would say that I wasn't quite as prepared for was there was a lot of upper body work.
No doubt. No doubt.
It was, pulling yourself up or easing yourself down, using both arms. So I kind of knew there would be some of that, but it was a little more strenuous in that respect.
You probably lost a lot of upper body strength as well, Bruce, because that's, your strength in your legs from your hiking and that. But I lost a lot of upper body strength. And when I got into the Mahoosuc Notch, I remember feeling that I hadn't used that sort of strength, for ages, and those muscles were really given a workout in the notch.
Yeah, so I had the same experience. So, but we did fine, and then went straight on to the famous Mahoosuc arm,
Yes.
Which some people say it was the steepest, most difficult mile on the trail. It was brutal because we had a light rain, and there's a lot of these sheer rocks. And I'll be honest, I looked at Gbolt and Recon and said, "Do we really want to do this? Is this too dangerous?" But we thought we would, see how it goes. And I do believe so much about mental preparation for this hike.
Yeah.
And
manage your expectations. Manage your expectations, definitely.
Yeah, exactly. And so I knew I had, a really brutal climb coming.
Yeah.
But you know what? It turned out to be not as difficult as I thought. It was really hard. Don't get me wrong. Really hard. The rain made it even tougher. But there were lots of sort of, where the rocks were really slick. You went up the edges, and
yes.
people had used tree roots and gotten a little bit off the trail.
I think it's another jigsaw to work your way up that as well. And funny enough, you talking about that, I'd forgotten about this, but I remember now that we took 3 hours to get through the notch, and we took about another 2 hours to get up the arm, maybe even 3 hours to get up the arm. So I remember it was lunchtime. We'd only done 2 miles. We were exhausted, and it was amazing. That's a great run and just spectacular.
We had the same experience. We got to a lunch spot, and we go, okay, we got a lot done. We got through the notch and the arm.
Yeah.
We just covered about 3 miles in 6 hours.
But you know what? It doesn't matter, does it? It doesn't matter.
It didn't matter. And we were happy that we had accomplished, something that's sort of so well known on the trail. And all of a sudden now I think for most through hikers, those two things are one of the rites of passage. And
yes,
we
definitely.
got through there. We got to Speck Pond, and we were thinking of making a short day, but we ended up hiking down off of up the Old Speck and then way down to Grafton Notch.
That's endless.
We got down there.
The climb down Old Speck is endless, isn't it?
It was so endless. But we got a little stealth spot right not too far from the road. And, talk about good fortune. A friend of mine I hiked with in Shenandoah who took 2 months off and then flipped, was walking through.
Wow.
We were probably 0.05 from the parking lot, the little stealth site. And
sure.
He comes by just as we were getting ready to tent. And it was great to see him. Yeah. And he goes, "Oh, by the way, Hyperlight's got trail magic." So we tossed our stuff down, ran down to the parking lot, and they fed us really well. Hamburgers and hot dogs and beer and cookies and a goodie bag to take with us. So we had a great day yesterday.
Magic moments.
A great day today. We went over Bald Plate, and you have 360-degree views, and I told Gbolt and Recon, I said, "I don't know about you guys, but this view, this being up on top of this bald, this sort of rocky, kind of like a bald, lots of exposed stone. The climb up to the second peak was interesting and different. Just fantastic views. And, I told them, this would be top 3 of my views the whole trip, because you could just see out forever. And you go, we're in Maine, and it seems to be sort of pretty undeveloped.
Yeah, it's magnificent. I remember it well. It's absolutely magnificent. And funnily enough, you're saying about getting together with some friends, some hiking with some people. Do you feel that is to make yourself feel better mentally, or is it more of a safety issue for you? Or are they conflated? Or are they combined?
They're combined. I don't want to be too obnoxious. I think I can handle the safety issues and come through pretty well. The notch would have been a little tougher by myself.
Yeah. And not as much fun, Bruce. Not as much fun, is it, by yourself?
No question, it wouldn't be as much fun.
Yeah.
But mostly for me, the camaraderie, the pacing, the not quitting because they're moving forward and I'm staying with them.
Yeah.
There's a lot. There's the camaraderie. There's I said it. The getting up every day and moving forward and getting towards the goal. and not feeling sorry for yourself and thinking about getting off the trail.
Yeah.
But get out there, and they're doing it the same. These guys are the same age as I am, and they're great guys, and they're good to let me hang in their draft and hopefully get to Katahdin.
Well, I think hanging out with people, when you go to the top of a mountain, you see these magnificent views. I'm sure it's enhanced by sharing it with somebody else. You're sharing a moment with somebody, and you can talk to them about it, as opposed to just look at it and call your wife and tell her, call your friends and tell them. It'd be lovely that they were there, but to actually have somebody there sharing the view and understanding and seeing what you're seeing made a lot of difference to me, I tell you.
Yeah, good. And today was one of those days. It was sort of cloudy when we went over the first peak. Unfortunately, the first peak there are no views, but the second peak there's the 360 views, and we watched the clouds clear, and it was just magnificent. And then it's just a perfect day right now. I mean, in some ways, I wish you were hiking right now.
How far are you away now from the end?
I think 256.
Wow. So the next couple of days, you'll be passing 2,000 miles, aren't you? That's a moment,
it's
I tell you.
To believe.
It is,
yeah.
When you think of the number 2,000 is just extraordinary. I actually worked it out once to try to work out the distance from where I live. I live down near Tampa, Florida. The distance of the Appalachian Trail when I did it was almost exactly from Tampa, Florida to the front gates of the Grand Canyon.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a long way, let me tell you. So you have walked a long way. 2,000 miles is one heck of a long way.
Yeah, that you've walked a lot more than 2,000 miles, because every time you walk down a 0.3 trail to get water or to a shelter, walking around town. So I've always thought, I wonder if the 5,000 steps are probably more like 8,000 steps by the time you actually do them all. So.
Oh dear, very funny. All right. Well, look, I'm really pleased you're with somebody now, because these are not easy states. There's no doubt about it. And just somebody watching your back is a really helpful thing to have from time to time. So I'm really glad you've teamed up with people and you're feeling a lot better. And hopefully we're going to catch up again. Let's try to get it earlier next week so we can get that, because I think Maine is such an exciting place to be in. I'd love to hear your reflections halfway through next week and then at the end of next week as well, if you can. I know it's difficult sometimes getting through. All right?
Yeah, and I'll try. I will say, cell coverage is probably getting worse and worse as I go.
Yeah.
But we'll do our best. We'll certainly
buddy.
try to. And
okay, mate.
As it turned out this time, I wasn't going to have coverage till today and tomorrow. So this worked out well.
Yeah, perfect. Okay, mate. Well, you keep on heading north, and thank your buddy Gbolt for his question, and don't tell him not to forget to send me his address or wherever he wants these sent. All right?
Yeah, I'll do it right now.
Okay, mate. Thanks. Take it easy. Cheers, then. Bye.
Cheers. Bye-bye.
How about that? His buddy on the trail asked him the perfect question, and it turned out that he was the answer to Bruce's prayers. I cut out from the audio the part where Bruce asked Gbolt if he had a question, but I promise you it wasn't a setup. How nice was that? And I've noticed this about Bruce's journey. He's been able to stay at some really nice, out-of-the-way places. How about Jeff and Tracy? Just giving up their home and feeding hikers for the princely sum of a few stories. I tell you what, Bruce, you want to get those stories out now while you can. When you get back home, it's all you're going to want to talk about. And for the first couple of months, everybody will be all ears. It's when those eyes start to glaze over that you realise that your only topic of conversation has become your hobo life on the trail. And only those who have done it have any chance of understanding your passion. It's funny, sharing the trail with regular hiking partners, especially near the end, was, for me, one of the reasons I was able to finish the trail. All my best memories, or at least the clearest memories, were ones spent in the company of others. So if you get out there, embrace everybody. They all have a story and they all want you to succeed. Just before we go, I wanted to mention a review we got last week on iTunes. A good friend of both shows, Jash of the AT, says, and Jash means just a section hiker, says, "Love the podcast so much that when hiking recently in the Whites, I left RTK some encouragement in some AMC hut registers." Jash goes on to say that he was very tired when visiting the huts and the notes were brief. It's the thought that counts every time, Jash. We've only got a few episodes to go now, so make sure you come back next week and listen as Bruce closes in on his 44-year goal. Bruce and I will see you next week.